What's shaking, cats and kittens? Rob Lee here, and today's episode of The Truth in This Art is sponsored by a new online art platform called Fire and Bliss Creative. Fire and Bliss is the first art platform that I've seen that focuses on the art of the LGBTQ plus BIPOC and ally artists exclusively. And I have to say, the pieces are amazing. Whether you're looking specifically to add diverse art to your collection, or you have a space that needs a bit of updating, every single print on fireandbliss.com has been created by a diverse, independent artist who maintains full control over their art and their profit. I work with Fire and Bliss to curate a collection of my favorite pieces, like Somewhere Blue by Wodrich Francois. Shop my favorites at fireandbliss.com/truth and get 20% off your first purchase at Fire and Bliss. Again, that's fireandbliss.com/truth and use the code TRUTH for 20% off your first purchase. Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I have the privilege of chatting with an open format DJ, producer, explorer. I'm going to use spelunking. Please welcome DJ Sun. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. What's good?
Everything is good. There is no problems in the world. Everything is fine. I'm just trying to be out there. I'm going to manifest goodness.
For everybody.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Love it.
So I feel like I'm doing more of this because I'm out there in the city, being around folks that I'm seeing people, and it breaks my rule. Usually I like to do interviews without seeing anybody do their thing, but I've seen you do your thing. And my girl was like, he's a really good DJ. And I was like, nah, screw it. I'm interviewing him. I can't have that be a title for him. But yeah, you're dope, man.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I did a job of describing who you are, and basically it's a copy and paste. But could you introduce yourself and give us those vital stats? And when did you get started?
Yeah, so I'm DJ Sun, and that's a play on words. My name is Jason, so if you cover the D in DJ Sun, it's actually just Jason. So some people never realize that. I have some very close friends and family who call me at like 4 a.m. years after they find out my name, and they're like, "I figured it out." So
I'm tight about that now.
You know, that's a fun fact that whatever.
I'm not happy about that.
Yeah. I've always been involved in music. I went to Baltimore School for the Arts, was in their classical music program, and around that time I picked up DJing very casually, just, I was always the one making playlists and stuff, and I think at some point everybody was just like, oh, we're throwing parties now, why doesn't Jason get on the aux and just start to whatever. Had a friend who, and this is like the most new school intro to DJing story ever, but the first time I interacted with DJing, he had the first iPod Touch had come out, right? And they had this DJ app on there. Yeah. So he showed me this DJ app, and I was just blown away. You could like mix between the songs in your library, the most elementary setup ever, And my whole childhood I was really big on 90s hip hop and in general, like DJ Premier, Jay Dilla, like a lot of the production that comes from turntables, Yeah. So when I started to piece together that these sounds that made some of my favorite beats were made on turntables, all of a sudden, like, even though I was experiencing it through the iPod, I was like, okay, one day I'm gonna get some turntables and really learn to scratch and like do all that stuff. And it was like probably almost 10 years from that moment before I got my first set of turntables. But so, that was like very early, like probably the summer before high school, where I started just messing around. And then through high school, I was just casually doing parties, and then ended up going to school in Philadelphia. And that was the first time that I I saw, Philly is one of the DJ meccas of the world. Some of the best DJs come from there. And just being in that environment and getting to see people, hustling art and really like making full-time DJing look like something that was obtainable and real. It was the first time I took it seriously and started consider making that a career path for myself. But so yeah, it's been over 10 years that I've been spinning, but I've been doing it professionally just over 5 maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you're one of the popular ones or what have you. So you talked about, I would imagine Lil Pete Rock is in there, maybe.
Of course.
Okay, just making sure. Making sure. So that type of stuff, that gritty, that imperfection, is what kind of was an influence for you. What are some of those other influences that might not be musically inclined that are baked into who you are as a creative?
Yeah. It's always hard to formulate this into like a eloquent thought, but
we can keep it raw. I mean,
yeah, but just being from Baltimore, I think there's a lot of things that I got to see and experience just centered around community in general.
Yeah.
From the block parties and the cookouts to, it's a relatively small city, so there's a lot of just overlaps in the bubbles that, in other cities you got pockets and pockets of culture that don't even know that these other pockets exist. And in Baltimore, we don't really have that. Everything's kind of like on top of each other in a way. And
it's concentrated. That creative equity is pretty concentrated.
And
there.
it's partially out of necessity, in this city, people have to have that space where they can feel like they can do their thing and express themselves, whether it's dance or art or poetry or cooking or whatever it is. So just the idea of bringing people together and people talk about art versus craft.
Yeah.
And then I think about functional art, and in a lot of ways I think that the role of the DJ, of the hip-hop practitioner, of this kind of middle figure in the music industry between the listeners and the creators.
Yeah.
It's kind of and this is an old school mentality, but it's an obligation to bring people together. So that's a huge inspiration to me, just getting, connecting dots culturally and bringing people together. And, it's down to the rhythm, when you talk about club music, you play some club music and then you slide into juke, which is the same BPM, same speed, but all of a sudden we're in Chicago now, but it's the same culture. It's cousins, you know what I mean? So I don't know, music just has that power. So I think, just community forward.
Yeah, and I think terminology has to shift a little bit too. When people talk about curators, I think we've both used that as one of the many things that we do. Curating is a part of the things that we do, and in different respects. But audio is a piece of it, right? And I think the other thing is out of necessity, as you were describing, we're very DIY here. But I think, how some people use, multi-hyphenate. And it's I think most of the people here creating stuff are multi-hyphenate.
True.
That's just what that is. It's I do this. So in that, it takes me to a question I had a little further down, but I want to get your take on this. Based on some of those traits, right, that are prominent, how do you distinguish an artist from a hobbyist? Because there's a lot of people I mess with it. It might just be in their own head that they're not taking it seriously.
I wouldn't even put those two words together, artist and hobbyist.
Okay.
I think that there's a difference between a professional and a hobbyist.
Got it.
But, and I'm thinking about even science. I was looking at something the other day. And the fact is, as controversial as it is, Darwin was an amateur. He wasn't peer-reviewed. He didn't have the same degrees that everybody else in science had at the time, but his notebooks that he was just doing on his own time that would have been looked at as a hobby thing back then changed the way everybody interacted with science and evolution.
Sure.
So I think some of the best artists never see the light of day, never get paid for their work, never. I think, it's weird. I think the best artists are hobbyists. You can be really good at something and be like, okay, I could make money off this, but I really hate the process. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I don't see that situation going as far creatively. And that's solely based on practice. I know that if I lock myself in a room with some turntables, you won't see me for a week, and I will think that it's been a couple hours. You know what I mean? That's because I really just love the process of practicing, and I think that that's a trait of a hobbyist. You know what I mean? And I've taken it and made it into a profession, but I think that
it's the number of hours you're putting in, process into practice. That's a thing, and as you can see the output that comes out, people's oh no, you're definitely, this is what you do.
Word. Yeah. And I think that what it is if you like it, it doesn't feel like work, and then you can practice I have a friend, and this is an analogy I really like. My friend Jack, who goes by Good Boy, who's one of the my favorite producers in Baltimore by far, and he this man has been making beats since he was like 6 years old, like legitimately, and he's got some of the most, like, his practice discipline is off the charts. We used to live together, and he would make a minimum of 3 beats every day.
Wow.
We would come home from a party, it'd be 3 a.m., smoke that last blunt of the night, falling asleep, and through the wall I hear 808s like getting tuned and him making something. And the next morning I'm like, yo, what'd you make? And he's like, I don't even remember making anything last night. But he had that discipline, and I asked him about it one time, and he just said, when you are a producer, when you're making beats, and it's similar for DJing when you're practicing, we have a luxury that other artists don't. We don't have to pay for resources. You don't have to buy another canvas. You don't have to, once you have that software, obviously, the entry price is expensive. You got to have a computer. You got to have a couple things. But once you have that, there's nothing stopping you. And Kanye talks about it, 3 beats a day for 3 summers, or 10 beats a day for 3 summers is what he did. We can accelerate our fail process.
Yeah.
And when you can accelerate your fail process, if 1 in every 10 beats is fire and the rest are trash, make 30 beats in one day. That means you got 3 really good sellable beats in that one day, where the painter next to you gotta wait till the store opens the next morning because
gotta wait for this to dry.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like not an obligation, but there's a opportunity there.
Yeah.
To kind of just fail as much as possible. You know what I mean? Which is something that should be embraced in a creative sense, I think.
So let's see. Let's talk about philosophy a little bit. When it comes to performing, like, what do you want people to take away from a set when they see, like, when they hear and see DJ Sun do DJ Sun things? What do you want them to take away from, coming to see you do your thing?
I think that I get very heady about this stuff as a DJ, as an open format DJ. So first of all, I think it's definitely different whether I'm doing like a 4-hour Black Swan gig, for example, or where I'm hired just to be the music at the space. You know what I mean? Or even like a album release party where they just want vibes. They don't want too much attention. So there's some gigs where they say that if you notice the DJ, you're fucking up, right?
Yeah.
I try not to do too many of those gigs. But
I remember me and one of my boys, and this is gauche. I know it's terrible, but we did it. It was like this DJ just had some really bad transitions.
Right.
It's like, you don't switch to that. We were like, boo!
Let them know.
We were audibly booing.
Honestly, that's what I love about DJing because, like, with rapping or other art forms, it's like you could have 2 people spit 2 verses and half the room legitimately likes one and half the room legitimately likes the other. Yeah. With a DJ, if you're fucking up, people gonna know. You know what I mean? People will really know. So I kind of like how not subjective it is, but
like, yo, you ruined my vibe.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah. But what I was gonna say is, aside from all that, something when I first started, party rocking, and that's a term that is different. That's like, you can DJ for years, and I know people who battle, for instance, who have never party rocked, you know what I mean? These are people who have traveled to different countries to scratch against other DJs and battle, you know what I mean, for the title. And then if you ask them if they've ever played a party before, they'll look at you sideways, you know what I mean? Like,
party fam.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's 2 different things. But when I first started, and that's what's really important to me, like, being able to connect with people and rock a crowd. But something somebody said to me one time that I always think about is a memorable set is better than a good set.
Yeah.
So when I DJ, what I want people to take away, I want them to feel like the music not only like was the perfect soundtrack for their night, but I want them to feel like it like broke their autopilot. You know what I mean? Like when you go out, sometimes you can be like, yeah, we had a great night. All the boxes were checked. It was quote unquote lit. That Migos song was playing and everybody got to swag surf. Yeah, it was lit. But I'll tell you what, when that DJ comes on at peak hours and drops James Brown,
So
you know what I mean? That's gonna turn your head and be like,
that's
damn.
the thing. That's the thing that stuck out that night when you saw me in the girl face. She was like, "Hold up," because we were about to go in the elevator. She walked over. That's when she came to you. She was like, "Is that some New York shit right there?" She was like, "Hell yeah!"
And that's my favorite. Like, you know, when you can really like pull people out of their own stories and their own heads. You know what I mean? And really bring everybody in the room to the same vibe, and just everybody's just like, damn, we're really dancing to disco in 2022, and it feels like 1979 right now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Where's the coke? I mean, the vibe.
Yeah, right. But you know, like, yeah, you know, so part of that to me is like being risky. You know, playing songs that you know are fire, but maybe aren't generally played in that space. So that's
the terminology around open format.
Well, open format is just technically in its simplest form, it's just, you know, you're genreless. You know, you might hear this, you might hear that.
Yeah.
To me, I take it a step farther, and I just think that it means able to meet the crowd wherever they're at, wherever you are at. You know what I mean? And that means having a large enough understanding of different musical genres that when you need to switch from house to Afrobeat on a dime, you can do that, and not in a corny way. You can really like dig deep in those different genres and those different spaces, and I don't know. I think that, you know, like food, like in different ingredients, you know what I mean? Every genre and every geographical or era-based style of music or groove, like, brings something different to the table. So I feel like when you study hip-hop, you can bring some of those techniques to your house sets to give it more flair and more personality, and then you can take the house set techniques to the hip-hop to give it more long-form structure and have people get a little bit more lost in the music, you know what I mean? So to me, open format just means like never box yourself in, never stop expanding, never stop learning techniques, transitions, musical genres, whatever, just so that in that moment when you're playing that one very niche night, very niche party, and you need to play whatever it is, it's not some shit where you gotta like, you know, make it work. Nah, you can shine. You can still like style on people wherever, man. You know.
I'm gonna end up hiring you for a freestyle party, man.
Let's get it.
And you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's you could only have it either in Miami or like Philly.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
It's just like, oh shit, is that Stevie B?
Right.
TKA, what have you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my joint. I remember going up there to Manhattan, and that's what the DJ was like playing, and I'm there with all the like the Latinx homies, and they're like, "How you know about this?" I was like, "Man, come on, be real."
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you go into like, oh no, this is a better one. This is a better one. Tell me about a weird or funny experience you've had DJing. Because I feel like you see things that you're like, I can't comment or laugh at that right now. I'm going to bank that away for later.
Wow.
You're like, that's some mid-dancing that you're doing, son.
That's very insightful. I feel like that's so funny. As a DJ, I feel like it's just that, like, we see so many politics of who's leaving the club with who's doing what with that, who's on this type of time, you know what I mean? And most of the time we just got to, like, you know, like, I don't know nothing. I
mean, I've been hanging at some speakeasies recently. I'm like,
yeah, right. Yeah, right. But I don't know, like.
And you don't have to get into specifics, but I would imagine you see things that you're like, yo, this is hilarious.
Yeah, I feel like all the time. I'm more so, I guess the funniest moments that stick out are like, for me personally, like, and I don't want to point fingers at anybody, so I'll point it at myself.
Sure.
There's been some moments, you know, and this is kind of part of my game plan of, you know, I'm always trying to put myself in situations I'm not necessarily ready for yet, just to push myself and really, you know, I feel like that's the only way you can really learn what you're capable of sometimes. But when I first started out, oh boy, there was this one night, right? So when I first started spinning, I was living in Philly, and I spent like the 3 years leading up to turning 21 just like, you know, getting kicked out of clubs and just networking my ass off, trying to make sure that when I turned 21, I was on the roster, you know what I mean, and could get some hours in and really start to get my chops up. And Philly has so many clubs, so it was a good place to be for that. Basically, one way or another, I ended up getting these opening spots at this club called Noto, which is, Philly's biggest club, Vegas style. The chandelier is bigger than some of the venues in Baltimore.
Wow.
So I was on their roster as a hip hop DJ, and I was opening for their appearances. So it definitely was a great time for my resume, to get some big names on there and stuff. But there was one night in particular, right? And it was a Travis Scott appearance. He was playing some big show earlier that day in Philly, and then that was the after party location. And I was opening, and I was stoked because, I was like barely 21, opening for Travis Scott. I was so hyped. And the day of the show, my guy hits me up. He's like, yeah, so the DJ after you really wants to use CDJs. So, since you're the opener, you don't really have a fucking choice. You're going to use CDJs. Yeah. All right, cool. And I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. Cool. Meanwhile, I've never used CDJs before. At this point, it's different. But at that point, I've never used CDJs. CDJs, for anybody listening who doesn't know,
it's a great name, by the way.
Yeah, they're that's the club standard. So they're made by Pioneer. Any club in the world is going to have these. Anytime you see a festival DJ, if it's not Technic 1200s, which are the standard turntables, it's going to be these, and they're $2,000 each. And then the mixer that goes in between is $600. So they're dumb expensive. And for that reason, a lot of younger DJs, it's a real issue. They don't ever get experience or time on them. So when they get those first professional, high-level, high-standard gigs, they have no clue. You know what I mean? So it's that's another story. But it's been it's been important to me to kind of like give younger DJs the chance to mess around on more expensive, more professional equipment, because I know in the past when I was younger that was like a big thing keeping me back from feeling confident at these gigs. But anyway, so I'm like, me being me, I'm like, oh yeah, CDJs, I got it, no worries. And at that time I was using a program called Tractor. So there's two like big, the two industry standards for software are Tractor, which is like more EDM, more European, definitely not your normal turntablist software. I don't know why I ended up on that, but that's what I was on at first. And then there's Serato, which people know because in that Kanye song he says, you ain't got no Yeezy in your Serato. He's talking about the DJ software. And that software works beautifully with CDJs. You just plug in, you're good to go. But I was using Tractor. So I had to go through I remember I showed up to the club. I had all these random cables trying to make it work. It was like 5 minutes to the doors, and all the promoters are just looking at me like, who the fuck is this child? You know what I mean?
Like, whose child is here?
Yeah, seriously. And I made it work. Yeah. But oh my God, it was brutal.
You MacGyvered that thing, though.
I really did, but it was really brutal. It was embarrassing, and I'm glad I can laugh about it now because it was a rough night. Had so many friends come out to see me, and I just was not doing my thing.
You know what I mean? Sweating.
Yeah, for real. And but the lesson there was, and I was on a warpath for the year after that. And this is again part of the open format philosophy to me. I was like, okay, I know I'm a better DJ than my set that night. You know what I mean? And there's no excuse. It's athletic to me. DJing is partially a sport to me. And I think that there's never an excuse to be confronted with hardware that limits you. You know what I mean? So after that, I spent time learning how to use CDJs, every kind of turntable, every kind of mixer, every kind of software, so that whether I'm at a homie's house, whether I pull up to the club, and every good DJ is gonna have a USB on them at the club, no matter where they are, just in case. You know what I mean? You gotta stay ready.
That's what I said. That's what I asked you. I was like, "Yo, I MacGyvered this joint because it was like invalid card." I was like, "Oh, I gotta reformat this joint," and I was like, "I don't know what's on it."
Hell yeah. Yeah, but that's it. Just and that's why I also preach failing. You'll never know how to do. I've had so many. I always say this. Somebody asked me the other day. They were like, and they were kind of fucking with me, but they were like, "Yo, how did you get so good?" And I was like, "Cause I've had more shitty gigs than anybody else." You know what I mean? I feel like, those shitty gigs where everything goes wrong and you blow the speakers and got to call your homie to get some new ones in at 12 a.m. We're in the middle of the fucking party, and then the stuff stops working, then the power surges. You got that's what prepares you for anything. And now, when it comes to curating and throwing my own events and building shows, or even just being in between the artists I'm working with and the people at the venue, you know, it goes a long way to like know how to set up speakers yourself and like do all that other stuff, how to fix you know.
It gives you more bandwidth, and you're a little bit less you're less flappable. You're more unflappable when it comes to something that inevitably is going to get in the way. And I think familiarity and time, like kind of the thing that you were describing, like, look, I spent time with this tool, with this software, with these turntables, what have you. I kind of did that with. Someone pulled out like, yo, do you know how to use like GarageBand? I wasn't using like Apple at all. I was only using Windows-based. And I was like, all right, let me get a MacBook and learn how to do this stuff. So I know how to use like multiple applications to get sound. I know how to use multiple devices to get sound. And it's just like, look, I can do it this way. My gear is probably about that size. I can put it in a fanny pack. And I have lavalier mics now. So it's a smooth setup because I was finding, like, as a person that's a tinkerer, as a person that's a problem solver, I'm like, yo, I hate carrying around a backpack. I was like, I can put the fanny pack on. It looks wild, but also it's more convenient. It's more flexible, and it makes me more flexible and adept. So I got two more questions for you before we get to the rapid fire ones.
Yeah.
So obviously you have this in-demand thing. You touched on a little bit. It's like I've done a lot of like crap gigs or what have you. And so in that is what would you say the key attribute you have, or the key attribute to your work that makes your brand successful, makes that DJ Sun brand successful? Because at the end of the day, we're all brands.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. So I don't know. I feel a lot of ways about it. Like, on one hand, I want to say, like, if you are passionate about something and you really believe in it, all you got to do is reinforce that and stay consistent, and the brand will build itself if your values and intentions are clear to yourself, you know? And I believe that, but I also, you know, from what I've learned and know about marketing, like real branding and marketing, you know, it only helps. And I think that, you know, just putting thought into it. You know, I have sat there and written my business model and thought about my mission and my vision and all these things. And I think just being aware of yourself and how you come off goes a long way. But consistency, you know, I've been, you know, I've been pushing a style and sound for a few years now that I think is pretty consistent. And being in Baltimore and Philly and New York, you know, I have certain things like club music and you know, just that East Coast on the go mentality that I think that I'm attached to regardless. You know what I mean? Just being from here and all that stuff. So I think that there's certain things in my brand that I can kind of lean on that like fill in the gaps of the story for people, you know? But that's a hard question. I don't know. I think consistency and really just like it all starts with just knowing really who you want to interact with, where you want to end up, and what you really are passionate about, you know? Because I've seen people try to present themselves as something that they can't really like follow through on, and it doesn't come off as genuine.
It's,
you know?
It's not baked in. It's a version of when they say you're bringing a representative, and you know, as a person that used to do that all the time, and I had a conversation with someone yesterday of, despite being from here, a lot of people think I'm from Baltimore. It's like, you know, I'm from East Baltimore. What are you talking about? And having this notion of, how do I kind of asking that question, like, what is my brand, and what are those things that makes me me? And then I kind of reframed the question after like reading one of these books, and it was like, how do you embrace your weirdness? How do you embrace those things that separate you from? You can have a podcast, an interview format with some other podcaster in and around Baltimore, and it's going to be different from this one. They can ask you the same questions, but it's going to be different from this one. And it's like, what makes what I'm doing unique? And it's just like, it's authenticity, and it's you know, consistency is a thing, because last month was a crazy month for old Rob Lee, and when you're putting out the stuff and it just rings through that. When someone thinks of a DJ, when someone thinks of a podcast, or someone thinks of, yo, this person talks to everybody. this person works with everybody, or he works with good people, or she works with good people, whatever. That's what part of that brand is. Mm-hmm. It's like, who are you accessible or, and it just has to show.
Right.
People can sit up there and say it. That should reinforce it, right? But if
Right.
you're showing it,
yeah,
that's the thing that really matters.
I feel like a good brand is like being a good person. Like, you just got to keep pushing.
Oh, my brand's failing,
narrative.
man.
No. But you know what I mean? Like, the idea of like just doing what's right when no one's looking, you know what I mean? It applies. Like, you got to keep pushing your narrative when you don't think anybody is looking, because, you know. But I really agree. Like, you know, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to do what they're doing better. Mm-hmm. And they might, but it's not going to be genuine. Where, you know, so what's driving it? It's that J. Cole interview I saw from years ago. He was just like, man, he's like, I'm here for love. I'm not here for money. Facts.
And that's the thing. Like, you know, when you fall into those spots where, and I'm sure you've fallen into it because I have, where you're like, man, I'm not really feeling the love right now. I'm not feeling that community thing.
Right.
And when you're in the community, you feel it.
Right.
When you're around it, you feel it. But if you're not really part of the community while saying you were in it, and you don't have any takes or any opinions on what happens in the community, then really, are you a part of it, or are you just kind of vulturing a little bit? Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my 2 cents right there.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, there's a lot of interesting conversations about, you know, the confines and the limits of a scene, or of a you know, gatekeeping and what there is to gatekeep in the first place, and all these things.
What gates, Jason? What do you mean?
I just, you know, I think people should come at it in a, you know, what can I contribute for the community, rather than what can the community do for us, you know. And I think mm-hmm. that, like, in my own sense, when I started to change the way I thought about it, things started to change for me, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I also got me thinking, like, you know, like, when I look at my brand, I'm like, I know that I'm not, like, I don't try to be the most lit DJ, the most like, oh, we're gonna, you know, rent a table and go crazy DJ.
It just turns to a Buffalo Bills tailgate.
Right, yeah. I'm not the sports DJ. I'm not the, you know, all black, we're gonna rave until 5 a.m. DJ. Like, I really try to be, like, I want to be the DJ that when you go to see them, you're going to see me play some shit that you're going to want to ask me, what the fuck is that? Like, I need that. Where'd you find that? You know what I mean? I want to play some other stuff. You
the dude I'm pulling Shazam out for every time.
Yeah, like, right.
I was like, hold on, what's that?
Like, I just want to keep things fresh and let people, you know, take people on a ride and make sure people never, like, you know, there's some DJs who, like, you know that when you go to see them, you're gonna sweat. But you're also going to hear a lot of the same stuff you heard them play last time at the same spot, you know? So it's important to me to try and keep things fresh, whether that means, like, playing in different spaces and all that. But, yeah, that's the, you know, I listen to, like, I really do, like, I still listen to classical music. Like, there's not a genre that I don't have some favorites in. You know what I mean?
Simpatico,
like,
my man. Simpatico there.
Yeah, like, I just really love it. So getting to share the different stuff with me, like, that's the fun of it to me, is like, you know, yeah, I could play it safe and play Cardi all night, but let's see what happens if I throw some.
I got a hot take for you. I'll tell you after this, because you triggered me right there a moment ago. So actually, you answered that last question. So I think we can hit the rapid fire then.
Let's get it.
So you know you want to answer these as quickly as possible.
Okay. Let me drink some water. Let me get it.
Okay. Yeah. Get yourself properly satisfied there. All right. So I got 5 of them for you.
Okay.
Now, I know you just said that you like to switch it up and you like to have something flexible. What is a song that commonly makes it into your playlist, into what you're playing? Because I know people have a signature. It's like...
Yeah. All right. One of my favorite songs of all time. And to me, if a song, you know, there's classics, there's hits, there's bangers, and then there's one more title that I reserve for the best songs ever.
I'm listening.
These are the cheat code songs. And what that means to a DJ is that I could play this song anywhere. And I mean anywhere. I could play it at a wedding. I could play it at peak hours at the club. I could play it opening for your favorite rapper at the stadium. I could play it anywhere, and people are going to lose their fucking minds.
The Macarena. No.
like, Hey Ya by Outkast.
That's a good one.
You know what I mean? Like, that's my go-to. Like, if I fuck up or something happens or the speakers cut out or something, you know, a good move. Tip for any newer DJs: don't play the song you were playing when the music cuts off.
No.
Don't start that shit over. Find a new song and start it to get the energy back up. And Hey Ya's my go-to. You know, everything's wrong. Everybody's looking up. There's that moment where everybody's like, should we leave? And then they just hear 1, 2, 3. You know what I mean? And it, you know, people are in it, and it's like, oh yeah, let's get it. But
let's go.
Another one, the one I want to say that I love, and I feel like it's a little bit more of a deep cut, especially for someone of my age. It's Love Comes Down.
Wow. Okay.
Love comes down.
Yeah.
That song goes so crazy, and like the drums are super like 80s, super funky, and the vocal mix just floats in a room. And I've seriously played that in a room full of like 16, 17-year-olds at like, you know, 1 a.m. and had everybody, like, it was Studio 54 in that bitch. You know what I mean? Like,
we're gonna have a music conversation after this, I feel, because I got some cuts I want to talk to you about.
Hell yeah. But that's a favorite.
So cheat codes, okay. All right. The hashtag that best describes you.
This might sound head ass, but just hashtag moves.
Fair. This is great. This is my favorite new question. Describe what you do poorly.
Oh man, podcasts. No, that's a hard one to do. Do the right? Rapid fire. Wow. Slow down, pause, take time out. You know, just to be.
You just go hard.
Yeah, working on it.
How long does it take for you to respond to texts on average? Are you a quick reply, or it take you like forever?
0.4 seconds.
Really?
Yeah. Generally, like on Instagram, it's a little bit different. But generally, texting wise, I just have anxiety, so I'm just like, let me figure out what this is, and get to the part of the day where I have nothing on my mind. Because otherwise, like whether it's business, personal, whatever it is, like I don't know. I like to problem solve, you know what I mean? And even if it's just like an interaction, I'm just like, okay, let me like make these plans, lock that in, answer this question, you know.
So this is the last one, because I like to ask people about their food things, but you know, I had that same weekend that, you know, I met you in the flesh for the first time.
Yeah.
I had a debate upstairs, so I need to ask you in this debate: French fries or tater tots?
Damn,
it's political, right?
Damn. Okay, I feel like...
And don't do, well, technically...
Yeah, no, none of that. No, none of that.
I learned that there are 9 different cuts of fries, by the way.
They're not?
There are 9 different cuts of fries.
Yeah, it makes sense. Western fries, curly fries...
Waffle
fries. Wow, damn. Yeah. You got me thinking.
It's a very fat question, by the way.
Yeah. No, I'm here for it. Love. Okay, so here's my thing. I think French fries, you can have like... There's no time of day where, you want some French fries? Of course I want some French fries. You know what I mean? Like, you always going to want some French fries.
Yeah.
But when tater tots hit, when it's time for tater tots,
they slap.
They go crazy, like crazy, because they're like, I don't know, you can't have tater tots with a burger. You know what I mean? You could, but you know what I'm saying? So I feel like when it's time for tater tots, even at like breakfast, you mash them up, turn them into some hash browns right quick. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like when it's time for tater tots, it's fucking time for tater tots. But fries will always cut it. You know what I mean? So
tater tot time.
Tater tot time.
So that's pretty much it. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being on this podcast, and I want to invite you to tell the fine folks where to check your work out and to drop you a line on the socials.
Great, yeah, no, and thank you again for having me. Been looking forward to this, and I'm a listener. I love the show, so
thank you.
Keep it running. But you can find me at Spun by Sun, Sun like the sky. So that's just SPUNBYSUN on Mixcloud is where I post all of my mixes. So if you want to listen to I got some hour-long just like radio sets that I've done in the past, or live mixes and stuff like that on Mixcloud. Bandcamp and SoundCloud for my production and for my original music. Instagram, Twitter, it's all Spun by Sun. So definitely tap in, reach out. If you live in Baltimore or Philly or wherever, really just let me know if you want to come to some events. I'll send you some flyers, whatever.
So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank DJ Sun for coming on to the podcast, stopping through. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there is music, art, and community in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.